You're listening to the Simply Flawsome Show, a podcast designed for you to listen, learn, and leverage. Please welcome your host, Zoe Turner.
Hi, my name is Zoe Turner, and you are listening to the Simply Flawsome podcast. Today, I'm going live first time on Facebook and YouTube. So I'd like to say hello to all the Facebook viewers and all the YouTube viewers. Today, I'm speaking to Matt Haycox. Matt is an entrepreneur who helps people who are struggling to find funding for business opportunities. So he helps them obtain the money that they require to successfully launch their business. On top of that, he's an online influencer and branding expert. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey Zoe, thanks for having me. I always like coming on other people's podcasts because I feel like I've got a lot less thinking to do. I can just sit back and relax and answer some questions. But I'm hating these video ones during lockdown. I've got corona hair, no tan, and we're going to make do, right?
Yeah, you're looking great. You're the opposite to me. I actually prefer doing the interviewing. I've never actually been a guest on anyone's podcast, although I have been asked quite a few times, and I always make excuses.
It's different. I feel like I have to concentrate less because I guess I'm just, answering questions to my story, questions I already know the answers to. Whereas, when I'm interviewing someone else, it's always a new experience. I've got to pay complete attention. I don't mean I'm not paying attention now, but I've got to pay complete attention because some of the things that you might say, I'll then make notes of to bring back up later in the conversation, and you've got to control the interview and everything else. So I definitely feel it's a tougher job being the interviewer rather than the interviewee.
It's a really challenging time at the moment for a lot of people. What are you grateful for at the moment during lockdown?
It's important to find something to be grateful for, to find that positive mindset to get through this with. And I think certainly as well, as tough as that may have been for people at the beginning, as of tomorrow, we're 4 weeks into this in England now, and if you haven't come to terms with it and accepted it now, then you really are continuing to make an even stronger rod for your own back. But I mean, once we've got through the initial kind of hit to cash flow, the detrimental impacts on the businesses, I've really been trying to concentrate on the positive aspects and how we can make the most of this time. And I have actually now very much come to being grateful for the time I'm not gonna say time to relax and reflect, because for me it's been as busy, if not busier, than pre-lockdown. But I have enjoyed having a completely different perspective on things. The chance to, I guess, almost step back with a helicopter view of the businesses and be able to, make decisions and plan for the long term and make changes in the businesses that, ultimately, we should have done anyway. I mean, for me, there's been, 2 or 3 different angles to the kind of changes we've made for our businesses and what I'm talking to other entrepreneurs about doing for theirs. And really it's a matter of making the changes that you probably should have made anyway, which I think it's very important to be honest and recognise that and admit it. I mean, obviously, people are making changes to try and get their businesses to cope with what's going on during the corona situation. So maybe that's finding a new method of delivering your product, or maybe it's taking your business online when it wasn't online before, and then there's other changes that we can make for the permanent delivery of our product in a different way. So I think there's 3 very different ways to be looking at the situation.
Is there any advice that you could give anyone during this difficult time who's struggling in their business, or who maybe lost the business and they're thinking about starting something else?
two or three different questions in one there in a way. And I think, for me, the first piece of advice I'm giving to everyone is to realise that this will end. That we are going to come out of this. Okay, we don't know when, and we don't know what each of us are going to look like when that does happen. But ultimately, it is going to pass. And what is going to directly affect how you look when you come out of this is how you now behave during lockdown. And the big piece of advice I'm really talking to everyone about is to understand whether or not you had a viable business model and a viable business proposition in the first place. Because and I know it's very hard for us to accept and very hard to us to admit. But I strongly believe that, and I know you're obviously over in Dubai when we're having this conversation, but over here in England, I think UK SME, a large portion of UK small businesses have been unviable and effectively bankrupt for the past 6, 12, 24, 48 months anyway. And they've been able to prolong the agony by a very easy availability of capital in the UK. We've had lots of alternative lenders who are happy to lend. We've had banks and other large institutions who've not wanted to either force people to go under or to allow them to go under. But fundamentally, the business models don't work, and what the first few days of the corona lockdown and the first couple of weeks have proven really is not that this worldwide pandemic has had these terrible consequences on your business that no one planned for. It was the fact that your business was not viable in the first place, and all it's proven is that without external support from somebody, you haven't got a week's run money or two weeks run money. I think it's very important that that people actually look at their business now and understand whether or not they had a business coming into this, or what material changes they either need to make to their existing business model, or whether it's time to look at a whole new business in general to come out of this. And obviously, over here in England, we've got the Corona Business Interruption Scheme, the loan scheme, the Corona Employee Retention Scheme. And again, talking to a lot of small businesses, for me, that they're either misunderstanding it or looking at it very wrongly. Insofar as these are schemes to fund the business interruption that has been caused by Corona. These aren't schemes to chuck more money into a business model that wasn't viable in the first place. So I think labouring the point, but I think it's very, very important to recognise whether or not you had a viable business. And the second thing everybody should be doing now, if they can't trade, if they can't make pivots in their business to be able to trade, whether that's going from offline to online or finding alternative methods of delivery, now is the time to be hammering your marketing. To be building your personal brand, to be building the brand of your business. Whether it's doing a podcast like this, whether it's bringing on a new social media channel that you didn't have before, whether it's hammering the social media channels that you've got. But and I'm saying this to my audience every single day, that never have we, nor will we, I don't believe ever again, or hopefully not, have such a period of time where every eyeball in the world is sat at home, desperate for somebody to listen to, desperate for somebody to follow, and that needs to be you, because if it isn't you now, and if the people who are saying, well, when this is over, I've got this plan and I've got that plan. Why do we need to wait for this to be over? Because when this is over, yes, okay, I think some people are going to have made some big mindset adjustments, made some big business adjustments. But again, the vast majority of us, as always do, are going to be looking at this like a New Year's resolution. It's going to be, I'm going to do all this kind of stuff when Corona's finished. And you know what? You're just going to slip back to the old ways, the same lazy habits, the same crap business models, the same, excuses, and not putting effort into whatever it is. So if you don't do it now, not only will you never do it, you're missing the greatest marketing opportunity of all time. And I can and anyone who's watching this who doesn't know me, I can tell you that, I mean, this isn't me saying this as let's say, someone who already had a massive platform, or somebody who kind of isn't practicing what they preach. Because I've always put effort into my social. I've always put a lot of time, money, and effort behind all my branding channels. But when 30 days ago, when we got locked down, I completely went all in on it, with more content on all platforms, with daily lives, with daily podcasts. And I mean, I can't tell you in exact percentage terms, so I'm not going to make a number up, but in the 30 days that this has gone on, the reach of my audience, the growth of my channels, the engagement from let's say prospects and potential customers is up 20, 30, 40
Wow.
fold, absolutely astronomically. And I haven't done anything special. I haven't done anything that I don't tell everybody else how to do. Just a matter of layering tactics on tactics on tactics and consistency. And I'm almost sat here thinking, I hope we've got another 60 days of lockdown.
Yeah.
Because I know the impact I can make on my brand that is going to last me forever. Okay, yes, look, I'd like to come out of this because I want to get some of my businesses back open again that are unable to trade during lockdown, bars, pubs, hotels, etc. But from a long-term branding perspective, I've got an opportunity now, to build long-term unbreakable brand, and everybody listening to this has got that same opportunity.
Yeah, that is so true. I know when this all started, I had the same kind of thinking as you, right? I'm going to bang out loads of podcasts. I'm going to use this opportunity. And then I got caught up with my website and my branding, and it's taken up so much of my time. Because yourself, being a content producer, it's up a hell of a lot of time, having to interview people, do your research, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, that bit of advice is just complete gold from start to finish. What you were saying about kind of business owners, that the business is not even viable at the moment. So if there's anybody watching this who is a business owner, who's maybe been keeping the business alive on a life support machine, maybe it's going to, make them stop and think twice. It was just a really interesting perspective to look at it.
I think a couple of things on the bits you've just said there as well. I mean, one just on the monetary side of business. When we talk about businesses being on life support machine, I think it's really important for you to ask on the monetary side of things. When we talk about whether or not businesses are viable, I think you also really need to ask yourself what you're doing it for. And I don't say this in an arrogant way, talking about money, but I mean, ultimately that if you're going into business, for me, there's two reasons you're doing it. You're doing it because you want to make X amount of money, and and you're doing it because you love that particular path that you've chosen. Now, if you don't even particularly enjoy what you're doing, which I think accounts for a large portion of business owners out there, and you are slogging your guts off, 6-7 days a week, 10, 12, 14-hour days to just about be able to scrape the payroll through at the end of the month and make be a business that's breaking even, that's making 10 grand, 15 grand, and you've lived your life like this for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and and we all know people like that. Even if we don't want to admit it's us, we all know people like that. I think now is a big time as well to reflect on why, and if that is the right thing to be doing going forward, because if you're doing all that, if you're going to all that level of risk and grief and stress, to make that level of money, and you don't enjoy what you're doing, you can go and make that same money, pulling pints behind the bar, or find something else. Find something else that is either a more viable path or path that you enjoy. So I think that's important point number one. And then going back to the other thing you mentioned, you were talking about finding the time to create content and creating content, things like these podcasts, etc. It takes time and it takes commitment. And I mean, listen, 100%. There's no two ways about it. To produce content takes time, and you just got to decide, what channels you want to be committed to. And again, if you don't think it's a channel that's going to work for you, if you don't see growth and viability in it, then fine, don't do it. But if you do, first of all, there are no shortcuts. And again, a lot of my audience, I always find it quite humorous actually, because I do a live every night. I normally do it for about an hour. That's on top of the usual content I put out in terms of videos and captions and everything else. But I've got people saying, well, I need a quicker way to do this, or I don't have the time to do the other. I'm saying, listen, you guys are saying this to me on a live that I'm doing for an hour every night. I can't make it happen any quicker. If I'm committed to this channel of creating an audience, of creating content, if I'm doing an hour's live, then I need to put an hour into it. I can't do an hour's live in 10 minutes. And again, that's before I've done a video for the day, before I've done pictures and anything else for the day. So I think first of all, there are no shortcuts, but with daily consistency, the results will pay off. I mean, again, anyone who's watching this who doesn't know me, just go and look at my Instagram. Go on my Instagram and look back at my posts over the last 30 to 45 days, and you're going to see every single day a little uplift. Little uplift. And then the last 7 to 10 days, you're going to see massive uplift. I mean, my posts now, today's alone, it's been up there 3-4 hours, and we're on something like 60 or 70 comments. If I go back a year, 18 months ago, I wouldn't get 60 combined comments in the whole month. But you've just got to be prepared to go through the pain. It's like a diet. You don't feel like you've lost any weight, on day one, or on week one, or on month one. But one day you wake up after 3 months of eating well every day and of going to the gym every day, and you've got muscles and you can see some abs. I must say, I can't see any abs, and I don't have any muscles because I don't put any time or effort into that. But then the other thing as well is, that there are many ways to be, let's say, clever with your content delivery. And whilst there's no shortcuts to actually putting the effort in, there are ways to be more efficient. So, like, if we take this podcast that Zoe's doing now, it's done as a live. So that's one piece of content. It's live on Facebook and it's live on YouTube. So actually, that's 2 pieces of content. She can then record, effectively dump it off as a full video, which can be used wherever. I mean, again, used on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever. So that's like a 3rd piece of content. She can then cut it up into mini bits. She can strip the audio off it to take away from the video, and then that's an audio podcast which can go out across iTunes, Spotify, wherever. She could transcribe it as a written piece for a blog. She could take the best quotes out of it for to put on a picture, and all of a sudden, what was one piece of content is actually turned into 10 or 15 or 20 or 30. So if you're clever about it, it's not as hard as you think, but there are no 2 ways about it. You've got to put the effort in. But I believe very strong. Well, it's not about believing. I see it day in, day out. The results are there and it works.
You've dropped loads of knowledge bombs throughout the short discussion we've already had. For those that don't know who you are and are not, I've done my research. I would normally ask for a bio, but I knew there was plenty of stuff online about you. I've done my research online, and I'm quite tuned up to kind of your background in terms of business. You're very qualified to give the advice that you've been given. For those that don't know who you are, you don't have to go into massive detail, but can you just give us a brief background about experience in business?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've been in business. I've been in, let's say, proper business for probably 20 years now. I mean, I'm 39. I think I worked in my first business when I was 18. So 21 years of proper business, and probably 4 or 5 years of being a school tuck shop entrepreneur. But before that, and I always describe myself as an investor and an entrepreneur who has done a lot of things very well and made a catastrophic amount of mistakes. But I've kind of made my mistakes so that you guys don't have to. And I get, when I talk to people, any of my advice, really, the only things I'll give advice on are the things that I've actually done. I'm not in, people always ask me about Bitcoin or Forex trading or this, that, and the other. I will never pretend to entertain a conversation where I haven't got, very strong first-hand experience of something. But I mean, my background started in leisure. I'd always wanted to be in bars and clubs and pubs. For no other reason than every 18 or 19-year-old guy wants to own a bar and meet a load of girls and drink a load of beer. I built that business up very successfully during the early 2000s in a time where availability of capital, very much like it has been over the last 2 or 3 years, was easy to access. I used to have a lot of access to a lot of lenders, and that's where I guess I learned the other side of the table. I was effectively a professional borrower before I became a professional lender, and I built all those businesses up in leisure, in retail, and in events, in finance, up until about 2008. And then when the credit crunch kicked in June, July 2008, I was completely over leveraged. Had no wool on my back, and a lot of faults in a lot of our business models. I guess it's very much like the old expression of when the tide goes out, you can see who's naked, and that was me, as it was many other businesses back then. And I went spectacularly bankrupt in September 2008. All the business, I mean, literally within a week or so, because everything was intermingled in one way, shape, or form. All the businesses went into administration. I was declared personally bankrupt, and I guess that was 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, and I've rebuilt from there. But very much rebuilt on learning from everything that went wrong from me back then, learning from my experiences, and my I guess my role as a funder, my role as an advisor to businesses in today's world now is very much based on all the lessons I've learned, because I really strongly believe that you don't learn anything when things go right. You only learn it when they go wrong. When things go right, it's like, oh, well, it went right. That's lovely. Yeah. You don't really know why. You don't know what could have happened if something had been done a different way. But only when something's gone wrong do you actually really get to sit back and analyze every step of the journey. And I guess I've had a lot of things go wrong, so I'm analyzing.
Matt, take us back to when it all did go wrong for you. One day you seemingly had it all. Multi-million-pound business, and then you lost it all overnight. I'm a big believer that when we reach rock bottom, pain can drive us to a positive place. But I do think we all go through a period of kind of wallowing and self-pity. What was that journey like for you? Can you describe that journey? How long did it take you to get yourself back on your feet? Did you have any dark moments?
I mean, I get a couple of answers to a couple of different points, really. I mean, I can never give, let's say, a Tony Robbins motivational answer to this question, because my situation back then, as I see a lot of my situations, really are driven from one of pragmatism, rather than one of let's say great motivational theory. And for me, the bottom line was that I had a 1-year-old. I was married at the time. I had a 1-year-old daughter. Bills to pay, food to put on the table, and even aside from all the aside from the practicalities, I knew I also had a lifestyle that I wanted for myself, and one that I'd been used to for the previous 5 or 6 years, and I was going to be able to achieve none of that by sat at home crying about what went wrong and what could have been done differently, and oh woe is me. So really, I guess my second incarnation was driven by practicality and necessity, and the fact that no one was going to pay me to sit on the couch. I just really had to get up and do it. I mean, what was it? Were there dark moments? I mean, I'd say there was, let's say, dark moments of, let's say, wondering, would I make it again? Because a lot of the advisors, or a lot of the stereotypical advice at the time was, when you're bankrupt, when you've had such a spectacular fall from grace like that, you never recover from it. And I guess those words rang in my head now and again, but I've never really been one to listen to anybody else. Certainly people not qualified to talk about it, or people who haven't achieved what it was that I was looking to achieve. So I very much really just got back on the saddle and got on with it, and really that is my advice to anyone else. I can't really give anything more in depth or complicated or surrounded in motivational mumbo jumbo really than that. And I know a lot of people may look at me and say, well, it's easy for you to say because you're not in my position, but I was. And I think in a way, if anything, I may have been in a worse position than a lot of people, because I think a lot of people who fail before they've really succeeded lots. And if you want to bring ego into it, it would have been very, very easy for me from an ego perspective to be completely shattered, by the fact that I've obviously built up a big business, talked a big game, being a larger than life character, and then had the very public humiliation, if you want to use that word, of the bankruptcy of the personal problems that came with it. But I just think it's very important to ignore everybody, as I talk about every day, whether that's with trolls online or people giving you advice about something they've got no qualification whatsoever to talk about. Don't let the views of other people get in your way, and get back on the saddle and go and achieve.
I think when people make a lot of money, especially when they haven't maybe come from money, they do go through a wanker stage. Did you ever go through? I'm sorry to the Middle East audience for my language. I don't like swearing much at all, if I'm being honest.
Many people will probably say I'm still in it.
However, did you go through that stage when you were earning your million?
I guess you'll probably have to ask other people rather than me. I mean, I always liked, I like to think I behave properly, at all times, or at most times, insofar as, listen, if I've got money, then I'll certainly spend it, and if I've got more money, then I'll spend more money than when I haven't got most. And I like to live a good life. I like the toys. I like I love spending money, but I also don't believe money ever makes me treat other people in a bad way or in a disrespectful way. And I mean, whether I've had money or I've not had money, I've always been very much the same person, I think. Like I say, other people may comment differently on that, but I genuinely don't believe that that it's affected me as the underlying person. I think for me, money, like alcohol, doesn't change people. I think it magnifies the underlying personality. And I think I always think to say it's changed people is almost an excuse, really. When people go, oh, I'm sorry about my behaviour last night, I did it because I was drunk. I think you did it because that is who you are. Just being drunk probably gave you the confidence to be a bigger twat than you normally are. I think money probably does the same thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Matt, let's talk about the foundation.
Yes.
The MattHaycox Foundation. Because the older I get, the more I realise that life is more about what you can give as opposed to take. I've got a football team in India, which I set up about 3 years ago now. It's probably one of my proudest achievements. Doing my research, I came across the MattHaycox Foundation. Can you tell us about that?
And I mean, I think we're probably going back nearly 4 years. I was up at a football game up in Hartlepool. I was there for business reasons. Half time, I ended up meeting a young boy and his family in the director's kind of enclosure. He was in a wheelchair. His family's all wearing T-shirts, saying "Help Alfie Walk." So I obviously assumed there was some fundraising exercise going on for Alfie. Got involved in a conversation with them, with the intention of helping. Was there helping? I was planning on making a quick donation there and then over lunch, and and getting on with my day. Never did I think it would lead to what it did, which effectively at the time I got involved on helping them with a pound for pound fundraising campaign to match anything they raised over the next 6 weeks. That took us to Christmas Day. They raised 16 grand, which was more than they raised in the previous 12 months or so. So I contributed the same on a match for match basis, and just being involved in the process, really, seeing that that tangible and visible difference you can make to someone's life who really needed it. And again, not just the monetary side of things, but the emotional support and the almost like the commercial support, because a lot of these people in these situations, it's not just that they need to raise money, they don't know how to act, not how to act, but how, when they've got the money, how do they deal with the doctors, how do they deal with the other charities, and a lot of the time, all these, let's say, fundraising organizations are all running their own agenda in some way, shape or form, and I just thought it's something that I've got such joy or personal happiness benefit, if you like, from being involved with, and and I thought I've got plenty of wealthy mates that I'll always be able to tap up. Why not make a more formal organisation out of this? So a few of us talked this through. The charity was formed probably 3 years ago now. It was really formed with the very simple remit of raising money in fun ways. And deploying it to cases that we could get emotionally attached to, and there's it's always hard when you talk about charity, because everybody has their own things that they support, and and it's not for me to say what's right and what's wrong. If I'm not into animals, so I can't get emotionally attached to a dog charity. Whereas somebody who spends a load of time in Africa can really get emotionally attached to digging wells and water projects and stuff. But for me, I wanted to see kid related stuff that was close to home and local, and stuff where I could really see it and see the journey, see the end result. And I guess if I've got one goal from this, it's that if in 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, I can look back, not look back, but let's say look and say, look, these are the 10 people or the 30 people or whatever the number is that we've supported and change their lives, and we all still maintain contact and maintain a relationship, then that's all I can really ask for. It's not about doing it on a massive scale. It's just about really enjoying every step of the process. And our strapline is we don't make our difference, we make the difference. And by that, what I mean is we're not one to put £1,000 into £1 million problem. We want to kind of take ownership of that problem and become a family.
Moving on, Matt, there's a saying, the average of the 5 people that we spend most of our time with.
100%.
I know that you're a prolific, is that the right word? Prolific networker. How important, how vital is it to you in your business and having a positive peer group around you?
Completely essential. And I don't, and ultimately none of the successes I've had would have been achieved if it wasn't for the people I've gathered along the way. Whether that's I guess whether that's people to fund a project, or people to partner on a project, or people to motivate me, or give me a different mindset, or people to help me fix a problem that I hadn't experienced yet, but they had. There is. I mean, it can't be overstressed. I mean, there is absolutely no substitute for for having a large network, full of high quality people. And I mean, I just love to put myself in situations where I can meet new people, and I love to surround myself with people who are better than me in as many aspects as I can find. And again, I think a lot of the things I talk about now are probably things that have changed for me over the years. As maybe my ego's mellowed as I've got older, or maybe I've just become more realistic to what to a more understanding of what works and what doesn't work. I think you take me back 15 or 20 years. I probably came from a peer group where you always wanted to be the big dog, and it was you'd always employ people that you could control. And you'd want to be in groups of people where everybody looked up to you. And now I couldn't have a more opposite outlook on that. I want to be surrounded by people who are so much more intelligent than me, who've got so much more money than me, who've got so much more talent than me. I want to employ people who are so much better at things that I could never possibly comprehend to be able to do. I think once you can take that step back to view it like that, and then make that commitment to building your network on that basis, it is just an absolute game changer.
What about mentors, Matt? How important are they to you? And is there any specific mentor that you've had that has been an influence on your life?
This is a concept that really only I guess I've only formally understood and taught over the last 3-4 years. I think that we've all. I mean, you reframe the word mentor, so retranslate the word mentor with whatever you want, whether that's advisor, influencer, whatever. I mean, look, through our lives, we always have influencers, mentors, whatever you want to call them, whether or not you particularly notice it at the time. And that was obviously the case for me, during my career. Let's say from being 15 to 35, but I probably never viewed them at the time on a formal mentorship basis. Whereas now, I'm completely, attuned to the fact that I want mentors, advisors, whatever they are, whatever you want to call them, who are the best in their fields in all the different areas. So if I ever get asked, do you have a mentor? My answer normally is, that I've got many mentors, because it's about getting the right knowledge from the right person, and someone who's a phenomenal mentor, in one area of life or one area of business, maybe terrible for something else. I mean, if you want to get fit, then you need a fitness mentor. That's not necessarily going to be the right person to teach you finance. If you want to do finance, that might not be the right person to help you with social media marketing. But I have, I'm fortunate enough to have surrounded myself with, and to continually look to surround myself with, with fantastically talented people in many different areas. And I've got all kinds of different relationships with these people. Whether the people, some people are, let's say formally paid, as in it's a role where I will specifically, spend X amount of time for X amount of money to try and achieve a certain purpose. And other people are just, let's say, genuine friends who are, particularly talented in a particular area, and the mentorship is much less formal. It's completely informal. It's just, picking the brains of a mate and chewing the fat. But I mean, I guess really it kind of goes back to the conversation we had a minute ago about your network being your net worth, and and the 5 people that you surround yourself the most with. I think the two topics are very much combined.
Yeah, thank you. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self, or your teenage self? 18, 19.
I think the one thing I normally say in this area is probably to understand the concept of mentors as early as possible, and to get the right mentors on board as early as possible. Because like I said, whilst I had people during my earlier career that influenced me, it was very much on a passive and informal way. You know, there was never people that I could sit down with to talk strategy, or sit down with to talk about a solution to a particular problem. And I know if I had that, then my journey would have been very different. You know, I mean, particularly, you know, with the likes of, you know, of the bankruptcy situation and how that was dealt with, or you know, I mean, most of my business for probably been 18 to 28, you know, it was all very much suck it and see, you know, try, fail, try again, try, fail, try again. Which, you know, there's nothing wrong. I guess there's nothing wrong with in and of itself, but ultimately, you know, we only learn by failing. You know, we only learn by making mistakes. But it doesn't have to be you that makes those mistakes. You know, if you've got the right mentors, you can learn from someone else's mistakes and save yourself a lot of time and a lot of money along the way. I think if I was to, you know, to make one big change 20 years ago, to give myself one big piece of advice, it would be to, you know, to really open my mind to that concept.
I was going to say, if you could go back to when you had the business, if you'd had mentors then, do you think that would have made a difference to the outcome?
Yeah, I'm sure it would have done, but I'm not. Whilst I always want to learn from the past and learn from my mistakes, I'm also not one to cry over spilt milk either.
Yeah.
And you know, look, what happened. Would I have liked it to have panned out in a different way? Of course I would. And would it have been different if I'd have had more mentors and more advisors involved at that time? It would, but I still don't know what that means. You know, would it have been completely different? Would it have just been a little bit better? I don't know, but I don't think any of us can argue with the concept that, you know, the more knowledge, you know, the more knowledge base you can surround yourself with, you know, the better odds you've got of any success.
Specific question that I would like to ask you is there anything that you fear in life?
I guess, you know, my business related answer is that, you know, fear comes from lack of knowledge or lack of understanding or uncertainty. You know, not knowing what's on the other side. So I always think from a business perspective, I never really fear anything, because I guess, you know, what's the biggest fear in business? It's bankruptcy or failure, and if you can, as I've already been there, I know what those concepts feel like. I know how to recover from those concepts. So, you know, and because I know that I've got so many people to ask to help me problem solve, then I guess from a business perspective, I don't really fear anything. You know, if you ask me what I fear in my personal life, I guess the same logic is in there, in that, you know, we fear what we don't understand. So listen, I fear death. You know, I don't want to die, but I guess I say that because I don't know what death is. Maybe it's amazing on the other side. I don't know, but yeah, you know, I mean, I'm pretty simple, really. I mean, I'm not a fan of snakes and spiders, but I wouldn't put them on a podcast list of things that Matt fears.
Are you a religious person in any way?
No, I'm not religious, but yeah, I mean, in a way, I don't know. So I sometimes look at religious people with, you know, with a hint of jealousy, insofar as I think, you know, it would be nice to have something to believe in. I mean, you know, but does it make any difference to me? No. I mean, I do. You know, I like parables and biblical stories, and you know. And I guess I believe that whether or not you're religious and believe in a God, that, you know, that most of the commandments from, you know, from whatever religion you want to pick, you know, are probably the way you should behave in life, and you know, the way you should be as a person. And again, you know, a lot of these old parables, you know, have business analogies and stuff as well. So I think, you know, there's a lot to be taken from religion, but no, I personally don't believe in a God.
I'll make this the last question. I would like to congratulate you for the TV show that you did. Tell us a little bit about that.
So well, this aired yesterday. It aired yesterday. So we're recording this podcast for anyone listening to it in the future on the 20th of April, and it aired yesterday in the UK on the 19th of April. I actually filmed it back in December. I forget the exact dates. I think it was the end of the first week of December. I did it for a week, and it was, the show's called Rich House Poor House. It's a Channel 5 show in the UK, which effectively is, it's a life swap. It's a house swap where someone from the upper financial demographic switches with the lower financial demographic. I got approached back in October of last year to do it. Jumped to the chance. Thought it would be a great opportunity. I very much like to, I like to collect experiences. I like to have stories to tell. I was, undoubtedly thought that would be a great story. But I also obviously wanted to, I guess, step into the shoes of other people, and see, and see what it would be like. I mean, listen, I'm not daft. I on the one hand, I can imagine, what it must be like to have X amount of money, but there's imagining it and there's actually really, really seeing it. So I thought it would be, a good learning experience as well. I did it with a good friend of mine. Because you need to do it with a couple of you. Normally it's like a family, but I don't have a family to swap with. So me and a friend of mine, Daniel, did it. So obviously, they need to film two of you talking and rapporting and stuff. Really, can't do it on your own. Swap with a lady called Anna, who had a 19-year-old daughter, and I'm going to say a 4-year-old son. They came to my house, I came to their house. We swapped each other's budgets, we swapped each other's hobbies and daily, weekly to-do list. But as the week went on, we get to learn clues about the other person, and then we finally meet up on the last day. And it's funny because obviously having met their friends, met their families, been to their places of work, seen the pictures in the house and stuff. You've got such a good idea that you kind of feel that you almost already know that person. So it was a fantastic experience. I guess almost like what we're saying with the charity. Having met Anna and helped her with setting up a business herself. I'm sure it's someone.
Is that the dog walking?
Yes,
dog walking business.
So Anna works in a photography shop at the moment, but animals and dog walking, etc., was a dream. So we helped set her up in business. I mean, helped set her up. It's running a couple of months behind because of corona-related issues, but. By the time we're out of this, she should be fully up and running as a dog walker, dog groomer, she's someone I'm sure I'll have in my life, for a long time going forward, and great experience and great people.
And you doing that, was that actually part of the show, or is it just something you did off your own back?
No. That was something that we chose to do.
That's amazing. I know you were on live with her on Instagram the other day. I watched it. I believe you had a few trolls on that for some reason.
No, that was the day before. That was the day before. I was doing a live with a friend of mine, a girl from Love Island, actually, and that was full of trolls. First time I've really had them, and certainly first time I've had them that bad. But I guess it must mean my audience is growing. If you've not got trolls, your audience isn't big enough.
Exactly. I guess if it wasn't you, it would be somebody else. Matt, I'd like to thank you for being a guest on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Zoe.
And coming live, first time live, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Rove Hotel in Dubai Marina. I know they support the podcast, so I'd like to thank the Rove Hotel in Dubai Marina for their endless support. And thank you so much, Matt. I'm going to end the broadcast.